This is Keith Cooper after accepting a multi-million-dollar settlement for his wrongful conviction in a 1996 armed robbery and attempted murder case in Elkhart. It's the largest wrongful conviction settlement in Indiana history, costing taxpayers $7.5 million. The cost for Cooper? More than 7 years in prison, away from his family, serving time for a crime he didn't commit. Now, Cooper's attorneys say he and others were targets of a rogue group of cops inside the Elkhart Police Department, dating back more than 30 years, known as the Wolverines. And Cooper's attorneys believe the actions of the Wolverines may soon make Elkhart per capita the exoneration capital of the U.S.
I was just told stories about it.
Issues as far as excessive force, brutality.
Everybody deserves justice.
They would lie, cheat, defraud.
And systemic misconduct existed.
Do we want to keep digging things up?
I always questioned everything.
I think I'm done.
Please raise your right hand.
This is former Elkhart Police Chief James J. Ivory testifying in a sworn deposition.
I do.
This testimony is the first known record of a former or current Elkhart City official admitting to the existence of an all-white group of rogue cops inside the Elkhart Police Department that targeted minority neighborhoods for years.
Did you come to learn of a group of officers in the Elkhart Police Department who call themselves the Wolverines?
Yes.
Members of the Wolverines have been implicated in violating the constitutional rights of citizens in the Elkhart community, and predominantly citizens of color.
Elliot Slosser is an attorney who has investigated wrongful conviction cases in Elkhart for nearly 15 years. He's part of the Notre Dame Exoneration Justice Clinic, which uncovered the existence of the Wolverines.
Should people question what law enforcement have done in Elkhart over the past 3 decades? Of course.
You can hear him in this deposition questioning the former police chief.
The Elkhart Police Department by 1990 had a reputation for brutality against people of color. Is that fair?
Yes.
This deposition is part of recent legal action to overturn the murder conviction of Iris Seabolt, who was investigated by members of the Wolverines. Court filings in the Seabolt case describe the Wolverines as a white supremacist group targeting people of color in South Central Elkhart in the 90s.
Some of the members used the N-word when they didn't know I was around. Of course, as soon as they saw me when I walked around the corner, the conversation ceased.
Keith Cooper was put in jail by Steve Rizutko, identified by at least one former Elkhart police officer as a Wolverine, according to court records. Cooper was sentenced to 40 years in prison, convicted for a 1996 robbery where a teenager was shot. Cooper's attorneys accused Rizutko of manipulating witnesses with suggestive lineups, withholding evidence which could have kept Cooper out of prison, and deliberately creating false evidence and witness statements. Rizutko later resigned from the Elkhart Police Department following an internal investigation finding Rizutko had paid informants for sexual acts. He died by suicide shortly after learning about the Cooper case being reopened.
Nobody was like, hey, let's go look into those cases and see if the people who are still in prison every day should really have a shot at justice.
Keith Cooper spent more than 7 years in prison before new DNA evidence and eyewitness testimony from the victim saying he didn't commit the crime led to his release. Governor Eric Holcomb granted a pardon in 2017. Then, last month, the city of Elkhart paid an historic $7.5 million wrongful conviction settlement, the largest in Indiana history, according to the University of Michigan Law School Exoneration Registry. The second suspect in the case, Chris Parrish, saw his attempted murder and robbery conviction dismissed because of new DNA evidence and testimony, which led to a $4.9 million payout after a jury had found Rizutko deprived his constitutional right to a fair trial. At least 9 former Elkhart police officers have been implicated as Wolverines in recent court filings.
The question shouldn't just be who was a part of it and what did they do. Another question should be who knew about it and why didn't they stop it.
During his deposition, former Elkhart Police Chief J.J. Ivory identified 3 men he knew as Wolverines. Bruce Davidson, a Fraternal Order of Police president who went on to rob 24 banks through 11 states, landing him on the FBI's most wanted list. Steve Ambrose, an officer involved in the 1995 killing of Derek Connor, which led to citywide protests. And Ed Windbigler, who went on to become the Elkhart Chief of Police.
They would all stick together, and regardless on whatever the issue might be, made me feel they would lie, cheat, defraud, or whatever it took to uphold their cause.
When Ivory took over as chief in 1990, he had a mission to change the culture inside the Elkhart Police Department.
Issues as far as excessive force, brutality, because of the Wolverines and the various divisions within the department, it was necessary for me to know who I could trust, who I couldn't trust, and to make sure that they were in fact abiding by our rules.
People wrote in to the Elkhart Truth, accusing officers of taking prisoners to the city dumping ground for interrogation. Fed up with the way Elkhart police treated the South Side, a 1992 arrest at the Washington Gardens public housing complex ended with as many as 200 neighbors throwing rocks and bottles at officers.
It was a very volatile time, and emotions were running rather rapid and rather high.
Over the years, the Elkhart Police Department has kind of taken it on the chin a few times.
Chris Seymour took over as chief in 2020 under similar circumstances as Ivory, tasked with changing the culture of the Elkhart Police Department.
Now, I looked at it as an opportunity to steer the boat in not so calm waters.
Seymour became chief after EPD faced a 97-page report from the Police Executive Research Forum, commissioned as a response to this video. 2 Elkhart police officers beating a man handcuffed to a chair. The incident led to then Elkhart Police Chief Ed Windbigler to resign. Windbigler, one of the alleged members of the Wolverines, identified by J.J. Ivory, a group Seymour says he never encountered in more than 2 decades with the Elkhart Police Department.
Had you ever heard about it?
I'd heard stories.
What'd you hear?
Same thing you're saying. So, yeah, we'll stay away from that one.
Protect and serve shouldn't be just a slogan. It should be something that they can feel.
Elkhart Mayor Rod Robertson admits changing the culture inside the department and building trust with the community is no small task.
When you did hear about an officer or any of the police department being heavy-handed in one way, shape, or form, it reverberated inside of the community.
The department followed suggestions from the PERF report to update its use of force. Every officer is now outfitted with body cameras and squad car cameras, and EPD has created an online reporting system for the public. The stats suggest there has been significant progress. According to the Elkhart Police Department, criminal arrests in 2021 jumped 46% from the year prior, while use of force dropped, and complaints on officers went down by nearly a third.
There's no finish line. It's an ongoing process for us. We're constantly evaluating and reevaluating everything that we do.
This new administration with the mayor and Chief Seymour is a bright light in an otherwise dark system of injustice. And I hope that the chief and the mayor continue taking efforts to fix things moving forward.
But Chief Seymour didn't appreciate the line of questioning regarding the Wolverines.
Do we want to keep, digging things up, or do we want to acknowledge that maybe mistakes were made or procedures were not in place to effectively do things, and now we have them in place and we're doing things what we think is right?
He made it clear past misconduct isn't something he's focused on.
Yeah, I think I'm done.
Well, and just to clarify, I mean, you're saying it's passed, but you know, Cooper was in jail up until very recently.
I don't want to live in the past, okay? I can't answer for what people did 30 plus years ago.
So what is being done today for people put in prison by members of the Wolverines? And if there was a pattern of misconduct, what is being done to investigate possible wrongful convictions for people still sitting in prison? Nothing.
Do you believe that the city should review any cases involving officers that were implicated in potential misconduct?
Not my job.
The city, county, and Elkhart Police Department all said they will not reopen cases or review past convictions that involved officers responsible for any of Elkhart's growing list of wrongful convictions. Elliot Slosser wants to see an independent prosecutor appointed to review potential cases of past misconduct, specifically involving members of the Wolverines.
We're not counting on a system that has protected itself for 30 years to somehow say, oh, we're going to do things the right way and look backwards.
Everybody deserves justice. That's what I would tell you. And nobody deserves to have their character assassinated because they made mistakes or whatever. They answer for their individual stuff, and that's nobody else's to answer for. I don't have a time machine. I can't go back and fix all this.
My job is to move forward. My job is to make sure that the administration that I have and the police chief that I have is applying the law appropriately. We will be there to assist whatever we are asked to assist in, but it's not our job and nor my administration to investigate past administrations or past police chiefs or any of those things. It's not my job.
There are 2 pending federal civil rights lawsuits from overturned convictions that could lead to more settlements. And there are 3 pending post-conviction cases that could lead to more exonerations. While the city and county both said they won't proactively review cases involving officers with a history of misconduct on the job, both said they would comply with any legal action that comes their way. In all, Elliot Slosser tells Night Team there may be as many as a dozen cases filed to overturn potential wrongful convictions. Coming up, more on the big decisions being